Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter folks here for a second. We're doing a live update here on the Mississippi Live Weather app related to the potential for some active weather tonight. And again, potential remains the big word here. There's more than a decent chance this is very underwhelming. We've had a lot of high schools obviously move their football games to last night, including our game of the week, which I think was already scheduled there for Thursday night with Oxford and Starkville there in the Oxford area. And certainly we are anticipating that many cases we're not going to see a whole lot of activity tonight, but there's a potential that we could have some active and possibly severe weather. And so, again, that's why we're having this kind of midday discussion here. So you're looking behind me outside in Pontotoc. It's 70 degrees, that temperature there. The measure of moisture, that dew point coming in around 61. So, again, not particularly high. A sign that the fuel, which is going to be the limiting factor for a lot of these thunderstorms, still remains lacking. That is exactly as we anticipated things going at this point in time. We go back farther south and west toward Yazoo City. Not Yazoo City, it's be actually toward Rolling Fork there. Notice the temperature is a little bit warmer, coming in around 74. That measure of moisture, though, quite a bit higher at 67. And you can see that moisture coming in. That's what these clouds represent. Those are the clouds kind of moving from south to north, that moisture kind of flowing back in, priming the atmosphere for more storms. So the moisture is on the way and eventually will yield some thunderstorms later on today. How many, how strong? Obviously, those are the two main questions. As we've shown, again, for the last day or so, we've had this severe weather risk. But if you watched us or missed us yesterday, you'll note that this was trimmed back some by even midday yesterday. The risk did originally kind of extend kind of back out this direction, and that level 2 risk actually extended back out like that initially there. Yesterday, Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma went ahead and appropriately kind of cut back the southwest portion of that, and then late in the day started cutting back this. That's because while the fuel is flowing northward, the upper level winds might be just a little bit out of sync. Most projections don't have a ton of storm activity in Mississippi related to this at all. But there are some chances near the Mississippi-Alabama state line. Certainly chances get greatest to the north and east. That's part of the reason, of course, why we're watching this potential for active weather for tonight. To see just exactly how that all plays out. And I appreciate Bobby for watching us there on Facebook. A lot of you also for tuning in Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all the different places where you support us, including the Mississippi Live Weather app. So let's talk about the severe weather threats. Again, tornado threat. You can see to the north and east and then to the south and east there. Basically, there's just more fuel south. There's stronger upper level winds north. Sometimes you pull it off more for the marginal upper level winds. But you can see as far as the tornado threat goes, the folks over there in Norman, and I agree with this, have trimmed that back in the north and east, thinking that, your greatest chance for rotating storms is going to be a little farther to the north and east, hopefully limiting that for our area. The wind potential does extend. Again, a couple isolated strong wind gusts, a possibility here across the northern third of the state. But again, when we look at these number of reports, the thing to keep in mind here is a 1 doesn't mean one report, but it does mean a more limited number of reports than if we're talking about a level 5 where those reports are widespread. So that's not the case, obviously, in this scenario here. And then as we talked quite a bit about the last couple of days, the hail is probably the greater of those threats that we are watching. And so we'll definitely have to see how that exactly, end up playing out. But let's talk about kind of the components going into this. I kind of mentioned this a moment ago, and you'll have to work with me here as I kind of throw things in as we go, because you know how I like to do these midday updates where I'm just kind of hacking this together as we kind of go along. So that's largely the way I'm going to handle this again today. Let's see if I can get you dew points up in here. So let's see, moisture, that'd be dew, and current DMA dew points. Let's drag this in at the top. Let's kind of do that there. So give me a moment to pop that in here. So this is a look at the current moisture out there. Again, those values are higher than yesterday. That is to be expected. As we talk about back Rolling Fork, kind of mid-60s, and we're mid-60s for that dew point temperature there in Belzona, back toward Kosciuszko as well, as that moisture is working its way gradually northward, even showing Cleveland at 69. So that's a fairly high number for that. Let's check out, if you don't mind me kind of going back and forth here for a second, I want to check out that camera out there in Cleveland as well, just to get a look at some of those clouds kind of streaming northward out of that storm there. I think I actually might have clicked on Shelby instead. Yeah, but Shelby again shows that moisture in those clouds just as well. There are a few showers out there. We'll look at that on Mississippi Live Weather Radar here in just a second, and then kind of dig into what the models are kind of showing. There's that Cleveland camera. Again, those clouds kind of moving through, apparently birds and bugs doing what they do as well. So back over here again to the latest scans on Mississippi Live weather radar. Got to take off that shot there for a moment and go back over here to the radar. Again, we've had a couple of showers as anticipated. They've kind of moved out into Alabama. That's where, again, this kind of initial push of moisture coming in, showing up at this time and kind of working its way that direction. I'm going to pull on kind of the wider shot here on what we call our surface map to kind of show you the components in place. Again, that lower level moisture coming northward, you kind of see some of that again with the clouds working their way northward as well. And then we have this front back to the west. So this will help initiate some thunderstorms as it moves in later on tonight. And that'll probably be late this evening before that happens. That gives us some time for the moisture to work in, but we're just rather unimpressed by how that moisture is working in. So let's see here. I should be able to double-click this, pop this in, and where that popped in. There's our dew points there, kind of showing up with that. Hold on a moment. I'm going to have to... I'll have to look at that here in a second. Yeah, but here's that moisture kind of working northward. And where's that graphic, Phil? Let me take it into the editor. Well, hold on, let's drop this in because this is kind of the limiting factor. I think taking a look at this is important because this will sort of show us, what is capable from here. So let's go into the editor on this and kind of work it forward for a second. So you can see how the moisture still kind of works northward, but we don't really get into the purples on this, right? When you start talking about this kind of more dense, impressive, lower level moisture, this is the stuff where a lot of times we're talking about tornadoes. See how that is way south? I mean, we're lower 60s up here in the northern part of the state. Now, I will say it does look like versus what we're showing right now, the model is a little low on moisture, so that could imply a slightly greater chance to see a couple of stronger storms than what the model's necessarily indicating there. But that is that moisture trying to work northward, certainly doing a decent job of getting through central Alabama. But here in the northern part of the state, that remains, I think, a strong and significant limiting factor. So, and then eventually, by the way, much, much drier air comes in behind this here. So in saying that, as we bring it back over here and we go back to the surface map here for a second, this front, once this kind of kicks through later on tonight, you can already see where it does have some showers up here into Kentucky and Indiana associated with this, and not quite as much back into Arkansas. Again, this is where there's stronger upper level winds up here and slightly weaker down south. So let's look at a couple of different perspectives on here, a couple different model looks on how this will work. To see kind of how this will end up playing out. So I'm going to bring up our HRRR model. Let's see the best one to do that. We do that. Let's do this one here. Give me a moment. We'll pop this open. And actually, yeah, I think that's probably the best one to kind of start on the wider shot here. Ignore what you have going on there at the bottom with my thing that we typically telestrate with. I prefer rather than just like advance it to just kind of force it forward. So definitely look at the bimodal severe weather here. How where there's a lot more fuel down south here in South Alabama, you do have more of those thunderstorms, even one that kind of looks like it's kind of a rotating supercellular sort of thunderstorm, and then a lot of the brighter red up north toward Nashville. That again is where we get, I'm going to pop back and forth here for a moment. On the analysis mode here, let's go back to the severe weather risk for today. That is, in particular, on the tornado risk. The reason you have this south, this northeast, is because the model's very clearly showing kind of the double mode going on with that there, where you have those stronger storms up north and then also south as well. Okay. So as I kind of advance this here, we do show some thunderstorms trying to develop down south of, say, Noxubee County out there toward Philadelphia, Scuba, as we head toward this afternoon. Projections have been pretty steady at trying to produce some storms for those spots the last couple of days. Don't have much going on out in the Delta, but these dots represent that moisture coming northward to kind of feed into some of these thunderstorms. So what about this front? We talked about this a second ago. Keep it on kind of the north shot here so we can kind of sort of see up there farther north. And so as we kind of advance this here, you'll see how as that front kind of moves in, a lot more thunderstorms up north where we have stronger winds aloft. This front is extremely weak. There's very little temperature contrast with it. You could say it's a cold front in name only, and there's a more impressive cold front back to the north and west behind this. And so as that eventually moves into the area, that'll be a much, much bigger batch of dry air and lift and everything else, but this one doesn't have as much to work off of. And I'll pull this front off of this here in a second for us to show it more effectively. But you can see 5 p.m., I do have a couple of thunderstorms, one near Sardis, that are going to kind of get going up along this frontal boundary as it moves in. So our chances aren't zero, clearly. But certainly storms are most likely to be strongest. I mean, you can just use the eyeball test here and say, well, I mean, that looks like a lot more stuff than what we have here. Absolutely the case. And as we've talked about the last few days, stronger winds aloft north, more moisture south, and perhaps we're in the sweet spot in between where we don't see as much. So that is certainly the way things are still kind of looking on this particular projection. But the one thing I would caution on that, you see how we have a few of these thunderstorms starting to get a little heavier? I mean, we're talking right at the northeast edge of the area, right as they exit Tishomingo County, move closer there to Florence. Thunderstorms getting a lot heftier there. So because we're on the developmental end of this, from time to time, you do get a few stronger hailstones out of what that largely looks like a rotating thunderstorm. We have another way to look at that using our storm rotation. We'll look at that here in just a moment. One of the good layering assessments we're able to do with this here. But just from the eyeball test on that, that looks like possibly a rotating storm kind of moving there east of Florence by around 9 p.m. for tonight with, again, marginal moisture. And rotating storms with marginal moisture more often than not produce hail more than anything else. And again, I'll pull this blue line, I'll pull this front off here in a minute, but I think it's a good storytelling tool, so that's the reason I'm leaving on there for a moment. But you'll notice for most of us, it's meh. And I wouldn't at all be shocked if some folks woke up tomorrow morning and said, that's it? Yeah, that's it. But when we start getting to these limited severe weather threats from time to time, you know, that is it. That's just kind of the way it works. So let's kind of walk this back here for a moment. As we walk it back, my model's going to be slow on apparently on bringing the cloud cover back with it. We'll walk it back forward again. So you can see some of those isolated storms. We show closer to Oxford. I'll pan this here so we can see Hollandale and so we can see Greenville and a lot of other locations as well. But the western portion of this, just less impressive on our projections. But all of this, trends are important. This is a lot more substantial than it looked like even at 5 and 6 yesterday on this exact model. We expected it to ratchet up a little bit more. That has happened. And so it's possible that there's, I'd say probable, that there's a few more storms than what this indicates this afternoon. That has been the trend, showing more and more storms as we get closer. Typically then the atmosphere overperforms projections in that situation. So let's look at the rotation part of this in particular. Give me a moment to see if I can get this right. UH. DMA latest UH, is that the one I want? I think this is the one I want. Give me a moment here, we'll dump this in. Yeah, I think this is what I'm looking for. Okay. Second for this to kind of populate everything in. And so, yeah, here we go. So what this is looking at, are we dealing with rotating storms? And so on this particular projection, I over-exaggerate the intensity of thunderstorm a little bit so we can kind of see that. But then I also look for those rotation tracks that we look at. That gives us kind of an idea where we have something. And this shows a little bit of a rotation track there by 6 p.m. Now, let's be crystal clear about what that means. Just because there's a little rotation doesn't mean we're talking tornadoes. In this case today, that's why we've emphasized that potential for some hailstones out of this, is because I think it's much more likely that we get some hailstones out of this than we ever end up seeing tornadoes out of these storms. So I think a little bit of rotation, isolated hail, while it depicts Oxford, just as easily could be Water Valley or Holly Springs or New Albany. But as you can see here in kind of the early evening, early after dark time period, 4, 5, 6 p.m. tonight, a couple of isolated storms are stronger, hence the reason a lot of those folks moved those football games toward tonight. And again, this is one projection at one time. We'll look at the couple different times with this as well. You'll see how there's just not much there. And then it gets at a couple of stronger thunderstorms, that 7 to 8 to 8:30 time period up here closer to Red Bay, Iuka, Tishomingo. And notice how as they work their way in North Alabama, that also kicks out a little bit of a rotation track. Now, not much of one there, but that's enough, as we were looking at that a minute ago, that again, I think some large hail there. And so if I'm Iuka, I'm like, well, hold on, that's pretty close to over top of me. Yeah. So I think, that 8 o'clock hour, again, give or take an hour or so on that, there will be some thunderstorms, New Albany, Boonville, perhaps Tupelo, Red Bay, Corinth, Iuka, really in this zone here, getting stronger as they move up in North Alabama and South Tennessee there, and closer to the Tennessee Valley, really either direction. And those storms are more likely to produce perhaps some isolated large hailstones with this. So again, while we're looking at storm rotation tonight, the thing to take away is that storm rotation is most likely produce hail more than anything else. Now, we don't show with that little batch that we have down there toward Montgomery County. Oh, it's behind me. Hold on. Let's get that there to where it's not behind me for a moment. Okay, so we show that batch there of Montgomery County moving towards Starkville there and Columbus. That doesn't get overly impressive on our projections, but I think there still could be maybe some small hail with that as well, and certainly some rumbles overnight as that kind of moves through. Let's look at a couple of, it's going to take me a minute to get this right because there's a whole lot of different projections on here. But I'm going to try to force this to go to, oh, it's not going to let me go to the previous model run on that. That's unfortunate. But we should be able to look at a longer range one. So let's do that. And actually, it's probably easier just pulling a new one. Give me a moment. I need 12Z. There we go. Let's double click that and put that back in here. And so as you note here, looking at a slightly older model run on this, and this is an important kind of distinction takeaway to pay attention to, is looking at a slightly older model run on this. The storms are slightly farther north, right? And they aren't quite as strong. So what that tells us is the trend is a little bit stronger and slightly farther south and west. Hence the reason we talked so much about it yesterday and today is that potential that maybe some of these do try to produce some isolated hail. So with that in mind, let's see here. I think this is the one I want. So look at the storm threats for today and keeping, this in mind. I would say, again, as far as confidence goes, we are not highly confident in severe weather. Be crystal clear. I would say the tornado threat is at most very limited, and that could be kind of overstating the case a little bit as well. Maybe an isolated strong wind gust possible out of this, and isolated large hailstones also a possibility as well. But in a very limited sense, most locations, that's probably not the case. And honestly, if I could put very low or practically none, that's where I'd be on the flash flooding threat. There's just not a lot there to work off of, thankfully. And so that means hopefully a pretty limited chance on that regard. But yeah, again, confidence remains very low to low on most of our severe weather criteria as far as today is concerned, basically because of what we were talking about a moment ago there. In saying that, a thing to just keep in mind in all of this is the fact that, when severe weather happens, you just have to know what to do and where to go. And that's where our weather call comes in. We talk a lot about this, and the reason we talk about this is because, things change. We're making predictions here based on good information, but things change. And so if you have weather call, when things change, you're kind of prepared for that. So it's something we had at the old place that obviously we brought over. There have been some tweaks. This also does major flooding, what we call flash flood emergencies. There's a lightning component to this as well that will call you based on the location that you're at, and some text messages as well for tropical warnings and alerts. So some different layers there that we didn't offer before. It does have a $15 a year cost. It is a way to support us here on Mississippi Live, whether we do make just a little bit off of that. But ultimately, the reason we talk about it so much is not because of that. It's because it is a way to make sure that, you keep your family safe. In saying that, the other main thing that, we highly encourage and, want to kind of emphasize here is that, we want to prepare early in advance on making sure that we know where all of our safe places are, things of that nature, in case that ends up being something we have to deal with later on tonight. So again, as we've always talked about, you want to be planning ahead to know where a certain sturdy structure is, things of that nature. This typically applies during tornado coverage, which is not necessarily going to be the case as far as tonight is concerned. I think largely we're not worried, not concerned about tornado potential out of these storms, at least for our area. kind of bringing back again those threat confidences. That's very, very low. But any kind of severe thunderstorm or stray structure is where we want to be. Now, I don't think we need to be going to shelter all evening, anything like that for tonight. But it's just always, as we get into this season, be thinking about the places, be thinking about the things, and that places us kind of in the safest possible scenario as well here. So again, to kind of recap where we're at, I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather. We appreciate everyone for doing that. The tornado risk for tonight is not for our area and has been trimmed back even more from last night. Damaging wind is the more likely impact that some of these storms will see, and I would say the most likely impact, albeit again very limited in its own right, is going to be the potential for large hail. And again, I think it's a very limited risk as far as that is concerned, thankfully, and hopefully that continues to remain the case on this here. And one other thing, I know we do have a lot of folks that, tend to watch us on the Facebooks, and I appreciate the ability to kind of chat with those folks as well. If you would like to, it certainly benefits us and allows us to continue to stay here and do this. Download the Mississippi Live Weather app. You can see for new update came out yesterday, a day before, that hopefully is even better on mobile data usage than the last version. Originally we had some issues where it was sucking down some data. That has improved dramatically over the last month and a half. And so they sent out another update, working to try to kind of pare that back. So in particular, the iOS, the Apple apps have struggled a little bit as far as that is concerned here. Let me go through the chat here. I see, thanks, Nice Beard. We're doing No Shave November here. My father-in-law is a prostate cancer survivor, and just drawing attention to men are traditionally dumb when it comes to health issues, and we need to be planning screenings because these things happen. And so whether you are a man or whether you're married to a man or one, it's that elbow in the side. Hey, have you done your healthy your yearly checkup to make sure everything's okay? It's easy to go a long time and not do that. Mine is scheduled for next month. We do it every December with my primary care physician. Just make those appointments. And, as strong as we try to be for so many other things, we want to make sure that we're there for our family. Hello in Pontotoc and Boonville and Corinth and Kosciuszko and everybody for supporting us here. Calhoun County, Amory. Hope Myrtle's wanting to get wet there, I think. I will say that there's a decent chance there. Clean up the yard. Was going to clean it. Hey, I would clean up the yard, but I will say this, it's going to be quite a bit cooler next week. So if you like it cooler when you clean up your yard, certainly, Matthew, that's something to keep in mind. Mentioned he is interested in hard freeze. I see someone mention suspenders, by the way. Almost every one of my suits has the suspenders on it. So that's the reason. I just didn't put on the jacket because it tends to be hot in this front room where I'm at here. So I just left the jacket off. So nothing's that bad at this point. Let's talk about that hard freeze for a moment, though. Someone was mentioning that a second ago. Best way to do that is probably a second here to pull up. So I've completely destroyed this show. There we go, surface map. Give me a second, we'll make this go wide. And so kind of behind this initial thing there's a secondary front. And this secondary front is the one where the colder air is. It's back there with that. I think if this, I gotta put this in play. It might zoom it back in if I do that. Yeah, it did not good. Let's see if we can force that data. National temperature. There we go. And so you can see there's some cool air behind this initial wave, and there's a kind of secondary batch behind this, and then this next front up in the north and west is going to kind of draw all that down here. And we're talking only 40s for highs by the first part of next week. So it is a substantial drop in temperatures coming up associated with that. Yeah, so we'll see here as far as that's concerned. Let me see if I can pop up. I click that to kind of pop down to the 7-day forecast here for a moment. Yeah, here we go on that. So look at this drop, though. We're going down to 28 by Monday morning and then 25 by Tuesday morning. So that's legit hard freeze. So if I went outside, the tomatoes that continue to produce along our back porch are probably going to see their end after that. So we're going to have to pick them all off here if we can pretty soon. So yeah, I mean, this is a killing freeze as far as, a lot of those plants are concerned. It's going to take some of the beautiful colors we have out there and kind of knock that off, unfortunately. But that's okay. It's that time of year. We expect it. Typical first freeze is around November 1st to October 31st, somewhere in that neighborhood for most spots. So, I mean, this is typically when these bigger blasts of colder air come. And then it shoves the moisture out of here. As far as storms go, we've got the chance for tonight and, arguably again tomorrow. That's what I need to talk about. Give me a second. We'll talk about that here in a second, the tomorrow chance here for a moment. But as you can see, shoves all the moisture out of here, and we are, well into the dry category back into next week. So if you're looking for fall, and fall that's not super cold, yeah, we're going to be chilly for some of those low temperatures, but look at these highs, mid-60s, that's about normal, maybe a little above normal by next Wednesday. Thursday, Friday, we get those cool mornings and the warmer afternoons. That's always a sign when you get those big differences there that the air is pretty dry, and that's definitely the way it's looking for next week. I mean, look at this, for example, like 76, 57. That's a lot closer together than the 71, 46 are. And so, again, that's the effect of that drier air. I did forget to mention tomorrow, partially because this is an update more than a concern. When we look at the severe weather chance for tomorrow, you don't see one on there. Previously, let me see if I can make this do this. See if he'll play along this game. Right, Storm Prediction Center did have a risk. Yeah, there we go. Now, that would have been the day 2 risk there, so I'm going to have to hit day 3. There we are. So this is the severe weather risk they had on there for Saturday. Ignore the fact that it says Sunday at the top. This is what they did have for Saturday, right? And so now, coming to the current time period, they have dropped that severe weather risk, because again, confidence is very low in producing really any storms with that secondary front. I think more than anything else, it just shoves in some drier air. So keep that in mind. But today's risk has been trimmed as well. A nice improvement there. Okay, give me a second. Hi in West Point, everyone hanging out there. Appreciate Diane. Looking back here through the comments on the Books of Face. Let's see here. Any rain next couple of hours? There could be a couple showers out there next couple of hours. Belmont, Mantachie. I'd say Belmont, you're closer to the more active weather than most folks. You're on that development in there. Mantachie would be as well. Blue Mountain might be pushing a little bit on the west side, but not impossible. Possible pipe busting freeze is what Matthew wants to know about next week. I think that's pushing it. I don't know that we're below freezing a long enough period of time. Typically, when we start talking pipe busting freezes, you have to be below freezing for quite a while. I mean, it couldn't hurt to keep a little drip going with that. But in general, typically we're teens when we start thinking of pipe busting freezes. But that's not to say that we're not marginal enough that maybe there's some issues there. So we'll see. We'll see if it keeps going down a little more. We've had to take that down a degree or two each of the last couple of days. We'll see if we can kind of hold it at the low 20s where we're at right now. What about Greenwood for the cold weather? We're there for that as well. Let's see if I can find a longer range model to pop in here. Give me a moment. GEMP. Where is that at? I need GFS. Okay, give me a moment. It's going to take me a minute to find the model to FS. To answer your question there, yeah, this is, so I don't always agree with this projection. I should be crystal clear about that immediately, but we're going to look at this raw on the air. So I might have some strong opinions. That happens from time to time on this. So let's see here. So this is just one projection. Again, looking forward to some of that colder air there. Saturday, again, low 80s out there. And again, we'll break down all that coming up. And then, yeah, you can definitely see that cold air moving in Sunday. Sunday, one of those days, and I did not mention this, where notice how temperatures don't increase much through the day. In fact, they might not increase at all. So it's one of those days, Sunday, where our highest temperature on Sunday is midnight leading into the day. So, on that 7-day forecast, you see the more mild temperatures on Sunday. That's not the case. It is a big drop. Let me clear off. Hold on. I need to clear off this this overlay you see on there. so that everyone can see this, because someone was asking about, delta temperatures. Let's see if I can slide this as well. There you go. Maybe you can see that, and I can still run this at the same time. Okay. But yeah, Sunday's a day where it is warmer early and then drops after that, and then much cooler as we look into the afternoon. I mean, you can see afternoon temperatures, 40s. You factor in wind chill temperatures. I gotta write that down. We'll have that for you later today as we're looking at that. I need to make sure we don't miss wind chill temperatures. I live in sticky note world here. So wind chill Sunday. We'll talk about that coming at 5 and 6 o'clock today on Mississippi Live Weather on those main live broadcasts we do. And then, yeah, you can see the actual temperatures. It's pretty cool there into Monday. Milder by afternoon, cooler for early Tuesday. Notice this projection is, again, way warmer than what we had you at there as well. So we'll see if we can, how that plays out. But yeah, I would say that, again, for comparative purposes, rather than looking at the exact numbers on this, and I saw something they were asking Greenville in particular, you're always a little milder there. We're below freezing with this, but we're probably not, or at least we're at freezing, I'd say, for Greenville. Again, this is way warmer than what we're showing there. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I don't always agree with what this model has at this time period. But the takeaway I would say is that you're more mild out there in the Delta. It's almost always the case because of the access to lower level moisture than a lot of the other folks are. And yeah, we stay cooler into the week. Those mornings remain cooler. Afternoons get a little hotter there. And yeah, by about a week from now, we're back up in the mid 70s out there, but still largely dry at that point in time as well. All right, let's see what else we got here. I think that kind of solves all of our issues related to that. Hopefully, folks appreciate y'all for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather. Saw everything on how to get a hold of the apps as well. I'll say that, I mentioned this a moment ago, but our next live broadcast is coming up tonight. That would be at 5 o'clock here in the Room to Room Weather Center. I appreciate Room to Room and all of our sponsors for sticking with us here on Mississippi Live Weather. And supporting us. If you see the commercials here, just take time to maybe watch a little bit of them. And from time to time, if they ask you to interact with them, if they're looking for your business, support the businesses that support us. And certainly it allows us to be able to continue doing this, hopefully for years to come. But again, thank you so much for supporting us. And we'll see you come up tonight at 5, 6, and 10 as things get closer or as things change. If necessary, of course, we'll be right here to bring you updates from the virtual weather center here where I'm at this exact instant, or also, again, from the studio. We'll be watching things very, very closely. So keep it here for the latest.
Give the gift of a delicious burger from Bulldog Burger, a soup and sandwich from Sweet Pepper's Deli, appetizers and cocktails from The Grill, or even a wood-fired steak from Harvey's. Choice is the perfect gift. An all-in-one gift card from Eat With Us.
When choosing a dentist for our family, Tupelo Smiles was the answer for us. They greet us with warm smiles right when we walk in the door, and they make us feel so welcome. We love Tupelo Smiles.